welcome to Monsters Under the Bed.
Hi.
Yeah, episode 1 of the podcast.
Exciting stuff.
Fuck yeah.
Trying to make you poop your pants.
Here.
What?
Prepare to get hard.
All
right.
This is going to be a spooky podcast.
Ooh,
If there's something
spooky.
that scares you, it's a little freaky, paranormal, we want to talk about it. We, being me, Henry.
I'm Alex.
Kenny?
Nick.
And this week we're going to talk about the Devil's Sea.
Yes.
Also known as the Dragon's Triangle.
Oh, yeah.
Also known as the Pacific Bermuda Triangle.
Oof.
But that's the
retarded.
stupid
Yeah,
name.
it's so stupid.
Yeah,
I
that
hate
name's
name.
dumb. I like Dragon Sea the best.
I like the Manoumi.
Yeah, that one sounds
yeah.
legit.
Which I believe just means Devil Sea, but don't quote me on that shit. But yeah, the Devil Sea, about 100 kilometers south of Tokyo, and the size changes, varies depending on the accident, what's convenient to fit inside the triangle. You know what I mean?
It all depends when something happens in a certain spot, people will shape the Dragon Sea to be where that spot
Right.
is.
I was just reading that. That's very interesting how, like...
It's scary, man. It can get you wherever you are. You think you're not in it, and bam, you're in it.
All these
It's like a
black
dragon or
holes.
something.
So the Dragon Sea is part of what was called, or what is called, the Vile Vortices, which are 12 points on the globe where these paranormal events and weird things happen. And that term was first written by Ivan Sanderson in an article called The 12 Devil's Graveyards Around the World in 1972. And so these are all points of this map, and they create an icosahedron, which is like a 20-sided die. And these are all kind of where like these dimensional layers of our planet kind of are said to grow thinner, and that's why all this weird shit happens.
All right.
That's pretty scary.
Yeah, so the other, like, you know, the other few points, or I should say the other 11 points of these vile vortex are, you know, of course, the Bermuda Triangle, the Algerian megaliths, Easter Island, the Humakalia volcano and the Hawaiian Islands, North Pole, South Pole, Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan, Zimbabwe megaliths, South Atlantic anomaly, the New Hebrides Trench, and the Wharton Basin.
So, actually, are there things that happen at all those places?
Yes, so all of these places have had some kind of mysterious event, anything from UFO sightings to mysterious disappearances to...
I was just about to
12-parter.
Dude, I know. I was just about to say, man, this sounds super alienish.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like it really does. Like it's like all these unspeakable things, or all these like things that are not, you know, you're not able to explain them whatsoever, and they're like, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I
like,
got the explanation.
And
Trust me, I got the explanation.
And a lot of people think that, you know, especially aliens of all things are part of, they share kind of like a same space with us, but they're almost like in another dimension, so we don't like have access to them. So that's why there's so many more sightings in these kinds of places, because it's said that dimensional barrier is a little bit thinner, or there's just a straight portal there, and that's how these entities come into our plane.
That's how
Yeah.
they get you.
and really the first time that the Devil Sea really came to be known, I guess, mainstream, was back in 1989,
With the hipsters.
when
I knew about
Charlie
it before you.
Berlitz published Dragon's Triangle, and he had already published the Bermuda Triangle, so he was kind of known paranormal world. So he
was a known psychopath back then who wrote many books talking about, making up a bunch of lies to fit his, you know, agenda and making these places seem creepy. Even though they are creepy, a lot of stuff does happen, but his information was proven to be inaccurate many times.
Yeah, he's also the one behind the Philadelphia experiment.
Yes.
and stuff.
Yes,
So
he
he
is.
might actually come up around here. It pretty much scientifically accurate that everything this guy says is. But 100% true.
and there are a lot of cases, which we'll talk about later in the episode, where he has been proven wrong time and time again, but he keeps releasing all these books, and people are eating this shit up. Like, oh my god,
I guess
like
people really like
these
it.
people are seeing aliens and ghost ships in this spot.
Whoa.
And this place
Larry-
had hundreds of ships disappear,
Larry
and then they're
Kush
like,
with a
no,
shield.
actually they found all 30 of the ships that were missing, and this is what happened.
Kind of reminds me of those. Remember that those magazines?
Playboy.
Yeah, the Playboys. No. So, and I don't know if I see them anymore. If maybe I just don't realize them. But when I was a kid, there was always these magazines that had these bizarre covers. It was like World Magazine or something like that. But they were
Yeah.
all like satire.
Oh,
You know, and but
Like
people
tabloids.
would, but people would still buy them because they legitimately thought that they were like real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it may be even like that kind of like, I don't know. We know it's bullshit, but
yeah, we all secretly enjoy it.
Yeah, not everybody wants there to be some kind of mystery on this world.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes things are pretty straightforward. And I think that mystery of the unknown is really what creates a lot of excitement in people's lives.
Yep.
Not a lot of excitement for Larry Kush though, who when he was a librarian, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people kept coming to him asking about these books about the Bermuda Triangle
Uh-huh.
and the Devil's Triangle, and he was like, "What is all this shit? People keep this is crazy. Like things disappearing." He starts reading all those books. And, nope, he doesn't like that shit. So Larry Kush went on a huge debunking spree,
And he'd published a book in I believe 1995 called The Bermuda Triangle Mystery Solved, which sort of called out Charles Berlitz.
that was 1975.
Yeah.
That's the Devil's Triangle.
Yeah.
The Bermuda
Triangle was in
Dragon's
1974.
Triangle.
74. So
Which book did I mean to write
one year
down?
after he published the Bermuda Triangle mystery, Kush came back and was like, "No, mystery solved." A year later.
Oh,
Yeah.
It was only a year later. Oh, I
Yeah.
thought it was like way later.
No, he was getting all these requests for the book, and he was like, "This is bullshit. I'm gonna debunk this shit." But then he went on in 1977 to write fucking Popcorn Cookery. So really, this guy's a crackpot. Let's be real.
What the fuck?
He was like, you know what the world needs? Numerous recipes of popcorn.
Debunking facts.
Yeah,
and-
debunking facts and delicious popcorn.
Yeah.
So
Popcorn's the best snack.
right, but I don't know if this guy's sane. Just saying.
No.
Just saying. Maybe Charlie's the sane one here.
No, and he's been proven time and time again to not know what he's talking about.
If anything, it almost sounds like he's just like, okay, run out of crazy stuff to do.
Popcorn's pretty crazy, right, guys?
Yeah,
I guess
guess.
Charles.
No. Larry was the popcorn guy.
Yeah.
Larry was the popcorn
Larry
guy. I
was
thought
the
Larry
popcorn
was the debunker.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then he went on to write popcorn books.
Okay, never mind. It's all right.
He's the
Popcorn's pretty
first one
good.
to butter popcorn. I don't know if that's true. But
It's not. Probably not.
I mean, it should have been.
It was Jesus
Or else
Christ.
it fucking
He
throw
had
your book away.
he had some weird stuff with baked goods where you ground up popcorn into flour and made goods with that. Larry did. So
He's crazy.
I'm telling
gonna
you,
have to agree.
crackpot.
Jesus.
Okay, but back to the Devil's Sea,
Right.
or the Dragon Sea, or Dragon's Triangle, or whatever you want to call it.
Formosa Sea.
If we want to
Formosa
look
Triangle.
into actually the crazy shit going on in that region, you have to go way back in time, 1000 BC. We're going back 3,000 years to ancient Chinese legends. Okay, this is where it's kind of, this is a mystery that we start off solved, right? Because I'm letting you know what it is right here.
Is this really how you're starting?
This is really how I'm starting it.
Mystery solved.
Mystery solved.
Mystery solved.
Dragons. Okay, this whole time, what was it? Dragons. Every ship. What happened?
Yeah.
Dragons. Guaranteed.
This is
Yeah.
dumb.
I agree with you. I think dragons can be placed in every scenario in this story, and I think we can prove that today.
And I
Sure
can. Myths and Legends of China by Edward T.C. Werner, published in 1922. This guy was a British consular in China. He spent a lot of time over there. Was an accomplished sinologist. which I learned is basically someone who learns about China.
Okay.
Okay.
What?
Yeah, it's just like
Why do they get a
It's like
fancy
the
name?
Egyptologist or something.
exactly, except I guess this is like in 1800s England, and everyone's like, yeah, that's a thing, including China. Even China was like, yeah, he was in their kind of their historiography bureau.
Yeah.
So he went around recording just the legends and stuff about China and their history, and according to his book, that sea dragons live in palaces beneath the sea. When the dragons rise to the surface, the whole ocean surges. Waterspouts form, and typhoons rage. When it flies, wingless through the air, the winds howl, torrents of rain descend, houses are unroofed.
Okay.
That's going to be key.
Kind of like when Jackie Chan throws a punch.
It's very similar. It's very similar. All people do say Jackie Chan is like a human dragon. They say it. They say it.
I believe it because I like him.
Yeah, see?
Have you seen Rush Hour? He's kicked so much ass. Chris Tucker was like irrelevant.
Well, that's relevant because
Chris Tucker?
well, not Chris Tucker, the typhoons, the dragons causing storms, because a few years later, good old Kublai Khan tries to invade Japan.
Right.
What stops that?
And he failed miserably, twice.
Because of typhoons,
Bad
which are not common in the area. When's the last time 2 storms hit the same area of Japan?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's actually they've done studies and they've concluded that for some reason 500 years ago, typhoons were more common in the area. That's weird.
Which is kind of weird,
That's kinda
especially
weird.
with global warming and all that shit that's happening these days. And it's really cool because the Japanese people had said that their gods or goddesses' breath was protecting them from these invasions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they said the emperor summoned these freaking winds. They had a lot of different.
Wow.
It was
they
like
really got into it.
it was
They
like
did.
in World War II. They kind of like reversed.
Yeah.
They kind of edited the legend to be like, go kill yourself for the
Yeah.
emperor.
It sounds like some political favor type of thing.
Right, but originally it was a political favor from a dragon to another dragon, which was the emperor of Japan. We'll get into that.
All right.
Different episode.
Different episode.
Yeah.
It's a 3-part series.
So it was
everybody.
like, it almost sounds like it was like mythology was built up around real world events that were going on between two. Like they were each like their own dragon in a sense,
Yeah.
and then they created like this like
this fantastical story.
yeah, exactly. But
Well,
it's really
well,
just a political
they
stunt.
were- They were definitely incorporated into things that did happen. Like, these legends were already formed, but when some kind of real event would happen, it'd be like, oh, well, the dragons did that. Of course they did. Like, how did you not know that? You know,
Right.
things like that.
And in fact, and why you might ask, would I assume that these storms have anything to do with dragons? Why would it come from the Devil's Sea? It's because in the Devil's Sea you have Okinawa. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
What?
Okinawa is one of the Ryukyu Islands, which are named
Is it-
after the Ryugoju. I'm going to butcher so many names, but it's awesome.
That's okay. We're all going
Is
to.
it in the triangle? Like
Yeah.
like smack dab in the middle?
Yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
Yeah.
sometimes it's
Okay.
like I said, the
Sometimes.
triangle changes.
Oh yeah, never mind.
Okay, so that is the Dragon Palace in Japanese mythology, smack dab in the middle, asterisk, of the Devil's Sea. Now, Dragon Palace also where the Otohime is from.
Oh.
Which is
The spooky.
the legend.
Yeah, that's the legend of the spooky girl that appears on the beach.
In
of
the
Japan.
UFO boat.
Yeah, in the little UFO boat. She comes from a boat up. There's like multiple mentions of her.
Yeah.
She's got red hair, which matches the dragon Kami. She appears to be I'm serious, the dragon Kami.
It was one of the first, and that story was one of the first recorded encounters with the third kind that Japan had.
Right.
So yeah, what happened? What happened to her? Is there any? Well, I guess not, because it was 1,000 years ago. They didn't really do a lot of that, but
Do a lot of what?
a lot of keeping track of.
Oh no,
people?
they actually did.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah. So let's see. So the oldest mention of her, I believe, let me see. It was... I did not get the date down.
Hold on, I have it somewhere.
Yes.
But it's probably buried in my notes somewhere. But we're gonna find it. Oh,
here we go.
1803.
Yes. Actually, yes. February 22nd, 1803. A lady washed ashore in a hollow ship. So this is kind of
happened, like...
this makes no sense. Okay, a bunch of Japanese fishermen find her. Mm-hmm. She appears to be 18 to 20 years. They document this. She appears to be 18 to 20 years old. Okay, didn't speak any Japanese.
Okay.
They pushed her out to sea. Ditched the weirdo.
Oh.
Ditched the weirdo.
Wow.
This hot 18-year-old redhead pale foreigner shows up. Doesn't speak any English or any Japanese. Maybe speaks English. Doesn't speak any Japanese. Push her back in the boat. Push her back out to sea.
Maybe she just had really abnormally long nipples, and they're like, "Oh, get the fuck out of here."
Well, she did that.
We only like women under 16 in Japan.
She actually did have abnormally long hair. It was that she had red hair with white extensions. Which I was like, ooh, the farmers know what extensions are. That's pretty interesting. But one villager, there's one guy who he was acing his charisma checks, and this guy, like all the fishermen find this chick, and he's like, no, I know what this chick is. He convinces everyone she's a princess from a foreign land.
Nice. Who
cheated on her husband, because this chick is clutching a box, right? And every time someone's like, oh, what's in the box? She's like, no. She won't let anybody touch this box. Mm-hmm. So he says, oh, she cheated on her husband and was banished with her lover's head in the box.
Nice.
Told everyone it's going to be all.
I mean, you'd be able to smell that shit, though. I mean,
maybe that's why she didn't want to open it. Who knows?
She was just very considerate.
Yeah. She was like, "Trust me, you don't want this. You don't want this. This is
You don't want this mysterious box that doesn't have a head in it."
Well,
getting through customs was a bitch.
And he convinced everyone, we don't want customs to come down on us. This is some weirdo. We gotta go to like whoever's in charge with this shit. Get her in the boat, push her back out in the ocean. Somebody else's problem. And everyone went, solid plan.
Wow.
Chief. Boom, did it. So nobody's problem. The thing about is it
or maybe they could smell the head and they were like, yeah, this is not
she's smelly, so let's just push her back out.
That smells like a dead body.
The thing about
we need to get her out of here.
Is it actually mimics the Japanese legends revolving around the Dragon Palace with Otohime, who marries Urashima Taro because he saved a turtle. He was like, oh, there's some turtle, right? And I gotta save this turtle. Right, he saves a random turtle that needs saving. I'm not exactly sure why, but it turns out the turtle is Otohime, princess to the Dragon
Turned out
Kami.
to be Donatello from the
it's like an
Teenage
anime.
Ninja Turtles.
It reminds me, it's like the Japanese version of the Frog and the Princess.
Right, exactly.
Like kind of.
Yeah.
So.
Except for like he's a turtle.
Yeah, well, and it's
he's
a chick.
sea turtle.
It's a chick too, so it's like the dude's just like, hey, hot chick who's immortal and wants to date me because I picked up a turtle. Pretty solid.
Yeah.
That's. I wish I could do that.
Yeah. Well, so he jumped on the chance and he went down to Ryugujo and chilled down there for 300 years.
What?
Because he didn't know
he died?
that time passed differently down there.
Of course.
So Taro was like, yo, I want to go home.
know what the conversion is.
I actually did
300 years is like 10 minutes.
There is an actual conversion, like hour to year ratio.
Really?
Yeah, I did not write that one down, but yes, there actually is in the legend an actual ratio.
Yeah.
And but he didn't know, and he was after chilling down there for I think he was only there for a couple of days, right? He wants to go home. Because he's like, oh, I miss my mommy. And, she was, like, really old. And so he's like, I need to go check on her. Like, I was supposed to go check on her when I was flipped this turtle over and then got married. Yeah. And so the princess is like, okay, cool, you can go. You want to go back up to service? Go, take this box with you. So he's like, okay, cool. He goes up, and she says, don't ever open the box. Don't open it.
Yeah.
Okay. So he goes up.
That's never good.
Yeah. He gets back up to the surface.
It's so tempting.
It's like the Hellraiser.
Right?
Yeah, and he goes home and he's like, yo, where's my mom? Where's my mom? And they're like, who are you talking about? Who? What? And he's like, don't you know me? From such and such town? They're like, oh yeah, there's a family that somehow they remembered. There's a family that lived here like 300 years ago. So basically, he finds out. He's like, what day is it? And he reads the newspaper. He finds out it's been 300 years.
Turns out it was just a prank, bro.
Yeah. So
Ashton Kutcher runs out. You've been punked.
well, dude gets super depressed. Says, well, I'm, got nothing to live for.
Okay.
Oh, definitely not a hot dragon princess back at home that I can go live with. So he opens the box.
Oh.
And inside is the time that he dodged out on, right? So all his old age. So the 300 years goes into his body.
It kills him instantly.
Dead.
So,
dude, that's
why
Indiana
she
Jones
told-
shit right there.
That's why
Ark of the Covenant.
That's why the girl with red hair, which matches a dragon commie, said, "Don't open this fucking box because if they open the box, she'd get all her age back and they'd kill her." She was from.
Pretty scary.
She was a dragon.
All right. You had me up until that.
She was a dragon. She had the extensions to kind of. She was like, "Look, I'm not a dragon," but they're like, "You're some fucking weirdo. You don't speak Japanese, so you're not from Japan." There is a theory.
Red hair too.
There is a theory because if you go back and think about it, the first time they mention or the first time she's seen is 1803. So there is a kind of bullshit, if you ask me, theory that it's actually Russians.
Russians.
Yeah, that they were Russian spies that were being sent because this also coincides with some Russo Nippo political bullshit going on at the time where Russia was trying to get involved in Japan and Japan was like, no. And so they might have been trying to do some incursions, but I think dragons are probably most likely scenario. If we had to be honest about it.
Sometimes rushing into Japan doesn't work quite as well as you want it to.
Yeah.
Yep, so the only other answer is dragons.
Dragons, of course.
Now,
Not any of the other answers.
What's interesting is the oldest mention of the Dragon Palace comes from about 1,000 years before then, and from 720 A.D. in the Chronicles of Japan. And in the myths of Hiko Ho Dimi no Mikoto. Yeah. The legend actually mentions a red woman who got a fish hook in her mouth for some reason, couldn't get it out, and he needed to get it out for her to save her. She was like the dragon commie. Like she was dumb. Had a whole grown lady fish hook in her mouth because she put it in her mouth as
a grown fish hook lady.
No, she got a fish hook stuck in her mouth from a fisherman on shore. It's a legend where the guy saves her, but it's like, why didn't you just pull it out yourself?
It's Ariel from The Little Mermaid.
Pretty much, yeah.
There's a lot of real sexy ways that guys are meeting chicks back then. We just have Tinder now.
Just fishing them.
We just have Tinder.
But so back then, in the Okinawa region, right, they, the Ryukyu Islands, the first mention of those, when they were found by the Japanese people, they said there were a bunch of happy immortals that lived there, right? In the Dragon Palace. And actually now there are underwater ruins there, which are actually found. We have found ruins underwater involving, there's like a big turtle statue. I mean, come on, it's a Dragon Palace. These are ancient ruins underwater.
That turtle statue
with the
sends clear signals.
We know the princess turned into a turtle, and the guy that married her traveled back and forth from the palace on a giant turtle.
On a giant turtle.
Yeah, on a giant turtle. You don't think the dragons are going to carry you?
Adding more stuff to it.
I'm not adding more stuff. This is all Japanese legends.
Yep.
Man.
Sure is.
Well, but it actually gets even a little more creepier. This is something that I haven't been able to actually attribute to dragons, and I'm going to actually say it's to try to discredit the dragon nonsense. This is the British government, right? Okay, because back in 1881. We had the...
They heard that story and they were like, fuck no.
Well, yeah.
Ain't no dragons in this scene.
Hell no. Remember the historically accurate movies, Pirates of the Caribbean?
Right? Oh, yeah.
Right. So they're like, we got to get the Kraken. We got to get rid of these dragons, right? So this is what's going on the other side of this is Pirates of the
The Devil Sea. Yeah.
right? It's good. That's
Well,
a
it
good
kind of like
movie.
goes.
pretty good.
It kind of goes back into like Nassau and
Exactly.
what is the Treasure Island? That kind of.
Oh, yeah.
Muppets Treasure Island movie.
The
Yeah,
Muppets.
that's like one of my favorite movies
Yeah, the
ever.
Muppets go to Treasure
It's a-
Island.
not-
Dragons
Tim
and
Curry.
Muppets. Welcome to Monsters in the Pit.
That's actually been the whole podcast. We're just going to talk about dragons for hundreds of episodes.
And
That
actually,
was
Enjoy.
so the first account we have of, I guess, ghost ships
Yeah.
coming from the Devil Sea.
And this is like one of many different events. You know, ghost ships, ships lost at sea, UFO sightings, odd alien encounters.
Yeah.
Like, there are a lot of things in this area that we're about to cover.
Yeah, so up until now, it's been kind of goofy dragon legends, which are actually the truth.
Yes,
And of course.
But,
absolutely.
But right, but now we get into the more modern kind of actually things documented. And the first one we have is from old Prince George, right? So
Prince George.
Yep, old Prince George,
Everyone loves him.
and it comes
Thanks.
from his journal, which is the cruise of Her Majesty's ship Bashanti.
Bashante.
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 1879 to 1882.
Yeah, we're not talking about the current Prince George.
No, we're talking about, what is it, Prince George V? King George V.
Right, and
Who
at the time,
became King George V
this
after
is pretty much compiled from the private journals, letters, and notebooks of Prince Albert Victor and Prince George of Wales. And this is the one who later became King George V. Now, to be honest, by all accounts, guy wasn't too bright, right? And
Not exactly the most credible person,
yeah.
but
Well, and they were on this ship because basically their grandpa was like, these boys are pussies. Yeah, and they need to be manned up, and the best way to man them up is put them on a ship and send them out.
Send him out there.
Right, and the royal family was like, "Oh no, we can't lose two princes."
Yeah.
So this is pretty cool. The captain of the Bashanti actually goes, "Oh, you don't think my ship is safe? Ha ha ha!" And he purposely sails his ship through a storm to prove, and it gets through perfectly fine to
Wow.
prove his crew is boss, and it works. They put both princes on the ship, so they go out. So this is a competent captain, competent crew. Well, in 1881, there's an entry in his journal called "We Meet the Flying Dutchman." It says July 11th.
So, wait, he calls it that?
Yes, he calls it flying because
Wow.
it's already been about 100 years since I think one of the first sightings of the Flying Dutchman.
Yeah.
It's a legend that goes. People know what this is when they see it, right?
also a legend in SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the only really relative one, too.
It's yeah. I mean, the Hoff was in the movie. He wouldn't be there if it wasn't legitimate.
Yes. I trust that guy.
July
Incredible.
11th at 4 a.m. The Flying Dutchman crossed our bows. A strange red light, as of a phantom ship all aglow, in the midst of which light the mast, spars, and sails of a brig 200 yards distant stood out in strong relief as she came up on the port bow. The lookout man on the forecastle reported her as close on the port bow, where also the officer of the watch from the bridge clearly saw her, as did also the quarterdeck midshipman, who sent forward at once to the forecastle. But on arriving, there no vestige nor any sign whatever of any material ship was to be seen either near or right away to the horizon, the night being clear and the sea calm. 13 persons altogether saw her, but whether it was Van Diemen or the Flying Dutchman or who else must remain unknown. The Tourmaline and Cleopatra, who were sailing on our starboard bow, flashed to ask whether we had seen the strange red light. And then it goes on to, this is actually an interesting part. At 6:15 a.m., observed land to the northeast, At 10:45, the ordinary seaman who had this morning reported the Flying Dutchman fell from the fore topmast cross trees onto the top gallant forecastle and was smashed to atoms.
Oh.
Wait, so he
Smashed
screamed
to
out that
atoms.
there's the Flying Dutchman and then fell off and died?
He fell off later that day.
Yeah.
He was killed.
Oh, bro.
Yeah. After sighting, he was the one that was like, "Hey, there it is," and then boom.
That's like some Final Destination.
And like I
Shit,
said,
yeah.
this is an experienced crew who was gone through a storm, and then he slipped and fell in the middle of the morning, just cruising
That's
around.
awful.
hmm
Dude.
And so 13 people on his ship saw it, and 2 other ships in their fleet saw
Yeah.
strange red lights. So I mean,
Nobody else died. Did
and
they?
as people say the guy was an idiot, but that didn't sound like an idiot. He sounded, he was writing that on a boat, like
Yeah.
going right
Yeah.
shit like that, when most people couldn't even write.
And it could have been dragons, too, that they saw.
A strange red light could have been dragons breathing fire. I mean, really, who knows?
You know them vicious underwater dragons.
Yeah,
Yeah,
most of the
they are
dragons,
vicious.
They actually are underwater.
Yeah.
in the ancient legends. But yeah, that was in the Devil Sea actually. So that was while they were cruising through it.
Okay.
There's been plenty of sightings of Flying Dutchmen all over the world, though.
Yeah.
That is actually one of the most prominent. And he later on became king of the British Empire. So,
Yeah.
I mean, shit.
That's true. He accomplished
How do you
something.
get more credible than that?
Whether it's
Those guys don't become king for
through
no
royalty.
reason.
Yeah, right?
Unless they're born into
Yeah,
it.
I mean, it's not.
Which they're not.
Yeah, of course, no.
not how society
Everybody
works.
knows what you do is you find a nice little orphan and then you turn them into a prince.
Yeah. And this guy, he was definitely not trying to just come up with cool stories to tell back home. Like, that's not what they were doing.
Of course not.
That's not what they were doing.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, so speaking of other famous people who've had weird things happen to them in the Devil's Sea, kind of, is Amelia Earhart. Most people know her as
Amelia Earhart.
Amelia Earhart. She broke many records, and she was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic. But also, a lot of people know that she disappeared. She disappeared while she was trying to do her second attempt at flying across the world. Funny enough, something was going against her because that was her second attempt. The first attempt was barely an attempt at all. She tried to fly away on the first attempt, and something went wrong immediately. The plane crashed without even lifting off the ground. And yes, and she crashed. And actually, they never truly figured out what happened there. They just knew something went wrong, and they crashed.
You know they didn't investigate. They were all like, yes, it was a woman.
Yeah.
Like legitimately, she probably did nothing wrong, but everybody was like, yeah, she fucking probably fucked up.
Yeah.
like the best pilot in the world.
Right,
You know, like,
but all the
she's a woman. I mean,
After all this
I knew she
experience
was.
that you
Yeah,
had,
they're like, she's full of shit.
dumb bitch.
her vagina probably got in the way or something.
God damn it.
Caught the wind.
So yeah, on her second attempt to fly across the world, she was flying. She had flown for probably a couple hours at that point, but she was, or at least like 24 hours, I think. And she was flying, but she was running low on gas, and that's where they had a little stopping point. But unfortunately, while she was trying to land at, what was it? Howland Island, that's what it was. She tried to make radio contact with Howland Island, but for whatever reason, they figured out that she was on a completely different frequency than what most planes used at the time. So she was using some really shitty antenna attached to her plane, a totally different frequency. So they could never get a clear reading on what she was saying. But one of her last ones that she sent was that she had about an hour of gas left and that she really needed to land. And they only barely made that out, and she never made radio contact again, unfortunately.
But she was in the Devil's Sea?
Mostly.
Yeah.
You're telling me a super experienced pilot just ran out of gas.
Right.
Just ran out of gas?
Yeah.
That-
And also, all this radio stuff. Like, her being the person that she was, you would think she would know about the whole radio thing.
That seems kind of... Well, but that's kind of... That might line up with some of the other plane fuel stories if she ran out of fuel.
Yeah.
Maybe some of that time shit.
Yeah.
And that's another, thing that's common in, like, the Bermuda Triangle, one of the other vile vortex, where these radio signals, like, for some reason are interrupted, or they don't go through, or they just don't work, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And there are theories behind that too.
Dragons.
They say that the magnetic core of the Earth kind of like fucks with that. It's almost like it, for some reason, in these certain spots that it messes with it.
Yeah.
And our ozone layer's like thinner in these spots too. So that's another one of those rumors with these vile vortex is just the actual buildup of the Earth is just more fucked up in these places.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so they did, or at least they thought that they found her bones and her body in 1940. This happened in 1937 when she crashed. But they thought they found her bones in 1940. And although a British scientist, I forget the name, but there was a British scientist that had collected the bones and was saying, "Oh, I found her body." But for whatever reason, those bones disappeared and they were never seen.
Those damn bones.
That kind of creep.
I found it.
And actually,
What bones, guys?
Right?
I got a bone.
I don't know.
It's unrelated.
He was like excited he found the bones, but then he realized if he told it, he was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh man, I shouldn't have told other people. I wanted these bones for myself.
Shit.
Well, I'll just make them disappear.
Yeah. That's probably exactly how he said it.
Yeah. It's like plotting.
Yeah. And so actually very recently, literally within the past couple of months, they thought that they found the bones again, but it wasn't anything. And now it's been like 70, 80 years we're getting to.
I mean, you're not going to find the bones of one chick who got eaten by a dragon.
Yeah.
She would flying around, dragon came, got the plane. Done.
just like that.
Game over.
That's how fast a life can end.
Yeah.
You know, if people
Dragons
would just
come out of nowhere.
people would just do some reresearch nowadays.
You'd
I
think.
mean,
My
you know,
goodness.
I got thousands of years of people saying there are dragons in the area. 3,000 years.
It's true.
She just flies through, thinks she can do it. Okay, eaten by a dragon.
Yep. So, more famous people that experienced weird things in the Devil's Triangle was future President Gerald Ford.
What?
He was also served in the U.S. Navy during World War II. In 1935, okay, this actually wasn't during World War II. It was 1935. They were performing war game maneuvers, I guess practice.
Pretend World War II.
Exactly. They knew what was coming. During that time, they had passed through the Devil Sea and a typhoon. They went right through a typhoon called Typhoon Cobra, and it completely wrecked their ship, the USS Monterey, and like 12 other ships. Completely destroyed them, and
G.I. Joe wasn't there to save him.
no, sadly.
When it rises to the surface, the whole ocean surges. Water spots form and typhoons rage.
Typhoons. There is, in fact, bad weather there. That does happen.
Dragon fucked up Gerald Ford.
Yep.
Historic fact.
And then he became president, all because of that event.
Exactly.
The dragon's guiding us.
That's how he
the
got
unknown tale of President.
How dragons helped humanity.
So they did actually describe the entire destroyer that they were on tilting from side to side completely.
That's gotta be terrifying.
It's
That'd be
terrible.
so
Like
scary.
giant ships just tilting and things are sliding everywhere. And that actually wasn't where the damage came from. A lot of the damage came from
Dragons.
not dragons, airplanes that were on the
Close.
ships, and they're just sliding around, smashing into each other,
That's
causing
really shit.
terrible
That'd be terrifying.
things. And I believe it looks like 54 people died.
Damn.
Yeah, and like I said, most of the destroyers suffered major damage, fires, a whole bunch of stuff.
If you've ever been on a destroyer or a giant ship,
Yeah.
in that category, you would know how huge and how massive these fucking ships are. They're absolutely
like being on
incredible.
like a small island.
Yeah, they're insane.
Yep. And so there was another one actually during 1944 where basically the exact same thing happened, but with a different fleet, a Japanese fleet. And that one was actually way worse, and there was actually 790 known deaths on that. And again, multiple ships were damaged, and lots of people died.
Dragons,
That
typhoons,
one was way
wiping
worse.
out fleet. They did it twice to Kublai Khan. People keep putting fleets in the area. It's
Now
a bad place.
Now
to
that
have
I
a
think
fleet.
about it, I think Titanic was really dragons.
Probably.
It probably was. It was an ice dragon.
Well, because think about it. You think they're not going to dodge that iceberg? No, they thought it was an iceberg. It was the
Then it was
back
a
of a
fucking
dragon. And he was swimming.
Yeah, you
I
just
believe
bit right
it.
into it. Just,
It was an unsinkable ship. Yeah, unsinkable unless it crashes into a dragon.
Or the dragon crashed into it.
Yes, it was on
while
purpose.
swimming.
This is before they had waivers too, so that
Think about-
nobody had the sign that said like, "Hey, if we get attacked by a dragon, we are not held responsible
Yeah.
for this."
Think about the rich people that were on the Titanic,
Yeah.
right? I bet you there were people that were anti New World Order. The dragons lead the New World Order. We'll get into that.
Fucking Illuminati.
Yes,
That's right.
and they killed them on using
Yep.
the Titanic.
That's a newly
Using the
forming
Titanic.
theory
Yeah.
during this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, no,
Get
that's
it
been
out for
around.
people.
That's the truth.
That's the truth.
That's what the Illuminati doesn't want you to think.
So yeah, there were quite a few things that happened during that time, and there were actually a lot more reported crashes and disappearances of vessels in the 1940s and 50s, and for whatever reason, that time frame was just a lot of reported instances of ships completely disappearing. It's pretty terrifying. That must have been a pretty terrifying time to be like a person on a ship.
Yeah.
Really.
Going into dragon
Yeah, and then
territory.
you just hear rumors of ships disappearing. It's like, oh shit, is mine gonna be next? What the fuck's going on?
And imagine too back then that like ships were such a main like source of transportation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine if like nowadays you were just driving your car and then like a dragon came and attacked you? Like, you know what I
That'd be
mean?
pretty
Like,
terrifying.
we don't ever have to think of like, oh, I'm going to the grocery store. Hope a dragon doesn't attack me. You know what I mean? But like being on a ship and that being such like it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I want to go on vacation. I'm gonna go on a ship, and then a dragon attacks you.
Yeah.
But nobody believes you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you're
that
dead.
Would suck.
Because you got ate by a dragon.
Because you got ate by a dragon,
Super
bitch.
dead.
I know after reading all this stuff, I'm like terrified of the ocean now. Like that shit, I was scared before.
Well, like
Yeah.
it's like 75% of the ocean has not been like
More
actually
than
in,
that.
Yeah, no, it's much more. Like there's
1%
like
of the
so-
ocean's been explored.
Okay, yeah. So mermaids are real as well.
Yes.
100%.
I
Bring it all
saw
in.
I saw that documentary on the Discovery
I
Channel.
saw it too.
They said it wasn't real. But
That's
think
just
it
what the
was.
dragons want you to think.
yeah.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, like there's the universe is so vast that if you don't believe in aliens, I really like
You're missing
And
out, I
dragons.
think. Really.
Well, actually, we can get into it. Different
Different
podcast
podcast.
about how
Sorry.
the dragons.
Sorry.
The dragons actually are aliens, but
That's true.
that's okay.
Yeah.
That was gonna be okay.
yeah. See, but we'll get into it.
They're
Yeah, we can get
draconic
into that.
aliens. That's like one of the 5 or 6 races that people say are around right
Are,
now,
like,
along
real.
with like the lizard people and the Pleiadians and stuff.
Oh no, all
Pretty
of those are
interesting.
actually cover up for the dragons, but we'll
Maybe.
get into it. We'll get into it. I figured it all
Well,
out.
So, speaking of those missing ships in the 1940s and 50s, finally they decided they got to send a boat out there to investigate what's going on. And that was a boat called the Kayomaru. And that boat was sent out, in fact, to go find another boat that had sunk and at least try to extract some information as to what's going on here.
And this was in 1952, right?
1952,
So
yep.
This was about the time that, because like a good amount of ships had gone missing in the area, right?
Yeah.
So the Japanese Coast Guard actually told people to stop going into this area.
Yeah,
They
completely.
warned shipping away from this.
Yep.
Yeah. it's like an official, hey, don't go into the dragon zone.
Yep. And yeah, it took them a very long time to figure out what was happening with these. Speaking of the Kaiyomaru, which was sent out there to try to investigate this stuff, unfortunately, that ship went missing as well.
Nice.
Well, that's like what you're talking about when it's like you're on. That's like a horror game, right? Where it's like, hey, all the ships that go in this area go missing. We're gonna get on a ship, go in the area, and find them.
Yeah.
No, you're not. You're gonna go disappear.
You're gonna go missing.
Yeah.
What did you think was gonna happen?
Yeah.
So
it's the equivalent of you're in a cabin. Like you're in the woods, right? You're on vacation, enjoying yourself.
Oh yeah.
And then like you hear screams and shrieks from outside, and you see a guy with a chainsaw, and you still go outside.
You're like, I'm gonna go investigate. Maybe the guy chopping trees out there needs help.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So don't do that.
Yeah, we don't encourage that here
Yeah.
on the podcast.
Yeah, when ships go missing, stay away from where they go missing.
Yeah.
Or you should, because it'll give us more stuff to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword.
Thanks, guys.
But hopefully
Thanks for
none of
supporting
the
podcast.
Thank you, Sprite.
okay, we don't want the listeners to go out and do it because then they'll disappear. But at the same time, we still need people who are going to do it.
Or
and the only
actually
way that they're going to
do it
know
in
that
live
we're
tweet us.
requesting this is that
Yes.
they're listening to it, which makes them a listener. So if we do this, it's like, which one comes first? The
No,
chicken
that's
or the
cool.
egg?
With the go do it.
Jeez.
Live tweet us. If you go missing, you'll be on the podcast.
We'll find your dead body and put it on the podcast. Anyways.
They'll never know. We'll just be
We'll
sitting there.
just pull a Paul Rudd. Or no, not Paul Rudd. Fucking, what was that? What's that one douchey YouTube
Logan
kid?
Paul.
Logan Paul.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Not Paul Rudd. Fuck me. Paul Rudd's amazing.
Paul Rudd's a nice guy.
Paul Rudd is
I love
great.
you. Hashtag Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd. So the Kaiyomaru did go missing, but they eventually found it. And after a much longer period of time, I think it took until 1972 till they finally figured out that it was probably an undersea volcano that had erupted or had released a giant gas bubbles that displace the density of the water below the boat, and then it just sinks it, and it is in fact on the Myojin Reef, which is commonly has volcanoes around there.
Pshaw.
Pshaw.
That would have to be a huge bubble. Because,
What
like,
do you-
bubbles, I mean,
what are the
essentially are, like,
chances?
oxygen trapped under water, right? So it's not wet.
They were
It must have
methane
been-
bubbles.
Well, what'll
Methane
happen is when
Oh,
these
okay.
when these bubbles start floating to the surface, once they almost ignite once they hit oxygen.
Right.
And that's
It's
what
going to
begins
cause
to
huge
sink
gaps
these
in
ships.
the... Yeah.
Right.
So all joking aside, I actually believe that is where the legends about the dragons getting ships, the breath coming up from the sea, comes from. Is actually people seeing those methane bubbles bursting up, and what are you gonna? It's just fucking it takes out the ship next to you. It's like, oh shit, fucking dragon breath attack or some shit.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
for sure. The amount of pressure that it probably releases when the bubbles arise, especially if it's that large. And not only that, too, but if it's at the bottom, it's going to be super pressurized.
Right.
And as it's coming up to the top, it's literally, the oxygen's pretty much just, that's the reason it's going up. is It's
Yeah.
trying to,
And I'll joke about what are the chances of actually hitting, but what was your favorite fact from that documentary we were watching? Millions of people go out in the sea every day.
As the millions of people go out to the sea every day, what can we do to stop these,
it's like,
this terrible
these
thing?
6 went missing. So.
Yeah, these 6 went missing this one time.
But it is actually dragons killing everybody who goes in the area.
Except for those millions of people.
Yeah, shut up. That's actually misinformation.
So,
Fake news.
yeah, of course. There is one more. There was a Boeing C-97 that had crashed in 1957 that unfortunately they did, which is actually really weird, is that when they were flying out, they said that they could see perfect weather conditions. There were no problems at all.
Sounds like a nice flight.
And speaking of weird
and
time
dragons.
shifts,
So
they
I-
also
fucking
reported they also reported a weird time shift where they were here at one point and then at the next point they were like 3 hours later and they had only traveled like 5 miles or something like that.
But that sounds like the ocean too. Have you ever?
Well, no. So that's the thing is like their fuel was expended, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it didn't match up with the time that had gone past.
Exactly.
Like they used 3 hours of fuel, but not 3 hours had passed.
Okay,
Like
okay.
And that's one of the first instances of the time jumps that people experience in these areas.
I don't think so. I think that's what happened to Amelia Earhart. I think
That's
that's why
possible.
she ran out of fuel.
Ooh.
Because that's what a super experienced
like 1 hour.
aviator running out of fuel seems bullshit unless she time jumped. She didn't know she had some shitty
Not only that, but
equipment.
she would have been communicating through radio, letting people know, "Hey, I'm running low on fuel."
Yep.
It wouldn't have just randomly happened out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that.
Shitty
That's
radio.
interesting.
Yeah, so I think that was the
That
first
kinda
time
ties those
jump,
two things
but we
together.
didn't know, and
Yeah.
then now it's going to start coming in
Huh.
more and more.
Yeah.
And so that C-97 actually was the worst airplane-related accident at the time. And from what I could tell, there's a history of Boeing C-97s that have crashed or had fires and engine failure, and there's all sorts of types of problems with these airplanes.
So let that be the little listener tidbit.
Yeah.
Don't get on those planes.
Yeah.
Don't get on
Avoid those.
C-97.
Yeah.
For some reason,
don't
one of
get on
those is still flying around.
If you're looking at purchasing a plane, don't
70
buy
years
one
old.
of those either.
It's probably 70 years old or
Yeah.
some shit. Don't get on it.
Yeah, they're pretty old. They are actually pretty old. This happened in 1957, so... Oh
You
boy.
could probably get a vintage one for pretty cheap though nowadays.
Ooh, live in it.
Yeah, of course.
Ooh,
Only
convert
like,
it to a house.
150,000 or something.
Be cool.
You're already investing, yeah.
And so we have another instance of another time jump that happened to a very famous TV personality in the 1950s.
You all know and love him.
Named Arthur Godfrey, and I didn't know and love him until we started reading about him, but
Yeah.
seems pretty accomplished. He was in the Coast Guard, real popular musician, TV, radio host, but he had an instance where he was traveling in the Dragon Sea, and he was flying over the Devil's Triangle and experienced some technical difficulties. Now, he was on his way to Tokyo, and he ended up having navigation failure and equipment failure. Now, he did arrive safely in Tokyo, but after arriving in Tokyo, he realized that he had lost 30 minutes of time.
Oh. That's not as big as the other one, but that's still significant.
And once again, another very experienced pilot. He had been doing this for a very long time, and I don't think that these experienced pilots just lose that 30 minutes.
And I actually think it's probably pretty important to point out that Arthur Godfrey, for a while, was a known skeptic. And
he was.
And one of the, I do not remember his name, but one of the original proponents of the 12 vial vortices, had actually gotten into a debate. They did a debate between him and Arthur Godfrey.
Wasn't it Ivan Sanderson, the guy that did write the book or the article?
About the existence of these vortices. And during the debate, when he pointed on the globe about where all the vortices were, Arthur Godfrey went, wait a second. I actually had weird things happen to me in several of these locations because he flew all over the world.
Yeah.
And he changed he flipped from a skeptic to a believer during their debate.
Wow.
So yeah, this guy, when this
Dude, that would be the
originally
best
happened,
debate ever. Like winning that.
Yeah.
The other person's just like,
you're right.
oh, you're right. All right, debate over.
Yeah.
I
So
experienced this
the
firsthand.
interesting thing about that is that was all after these things. So when this occurred to him, he didn't believe in any of the weird shit. And he goes, wait, I just lost 30 minutes. And he didn't believe in ghosts or anything like that. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's just, a lot of these events that happen in this area are just undeniably freaky and odd. There's so many things that are unexplainable that happen. So we have some more things that happen later on. Now we're jumping forward to 1980, when a Russian researcher named Professor Platonov came in contact with a USO, which is an unidentified submerged object, that had apparently circled his ship for several minutes, then flooded the area with a blinding blue light. And that was one of many instances with a USO.
Well, and I do want to kind of jump back a bit because to 1966 because we actually found another instance of it. What was it, C-97?
Yeah.
Where one teleported hundreds of miles.
That's right.
Ahead of course.
Mm.
And when they landed at base, the pilots reported it to their, the upper management guys. Nothing happened. They said, guys, we lost. Or they actually didn't lose. They never used the fuel.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is like a kind of different instance where they teleport 100 miles ahead of, and then they like, hey, how did we get here with all this fuel?
Yeah.
So they report it to nothing happened. Goes quiet. Yeah.
Dang, there's no follow up with those guys too. They're like, they probably were just like, I guess.
And there are a lot of people in the military that have said that, especially like the U.S. Navy and Air Force, know about this area and other areas, and they keep it quiet.
Yeah.
Because there are so many things that have happened to all these different militaries around the world, but especially the U.S. military, where we have a lot of our accounts from.
Yeah. And that's probably why Japan declared it like a danger zone. And it was like, don't go out here.
You will stay out, American.
Yeah.
And now we are going to talk about one of the more famous vessels that had gone missing, the Derbyshire, which is one of the biggest British ships ever made, and that had begun its journey from, Sept Isles, Quebec, Canada, and on July 11th, 1980. And it was a merchant ship carrying over 157,000 tons of iron ore. And this ship was traveling down to Kawasaki, Japan. Now, this ship had gone missing on September 9th of 1980 with no distress call, no mayday, nothing.
Oh.
And later on, so it after that, it had gone missing completely, and a search had begun. They had searched for the ship for a little bit under a week. They'd searched for the ship, and nothing ended up coming up. But until 1994, when an expedition had been launched, and they were sort of investigating, once again, kind of like the Kayamaru, they've been investigating things that happened in the area, but they had gone out in 94 with the goal of finding what happened to the Derbyshire, where it was, and they did end up finding it.
Oh, okay.
It took them, I believe, 4 months to find the actual ship.
Yeah.
They did have equipment failure the first time they went.
I was gonna say, do we need to talk about the dragon stopping them?
They had dropped I think it was a $900,000 piece of
$600,000.
a very
No, 800. It was 800,000. I remember it was almost a fucking $1 million.
A very expensive piece of deep sea equipment. The cable had snapped off of the cable.
Yep.
Proof of dragons biting the cable.
Yep.
And they had later on gone back out and found the rest of the remains of the ship. And the way they'd found that was they had found the iron ore on the base of the sea, and they ended up finding it and concluded that the ship had been imploded because of the water intake, and after it sunk, it was pretty much just torn to shreds after it sunk.
Yeah.
So, now the real story about what happened in the Derbyshire. So he loses this almost $1 million piece of equipment, right? This guy from some university.
What a loser.
You gotta look at this guy. He's a dweeb.
Yeah.
You know it. I know it. We all know it.
It's true.
He loses this. Now, when he goes to retrieve it, what stops him?
Dragons?
Just a storm that comes up out of nowhere, summoned by a dragon.
Dragons.
And he comes to some bullshit conclusion that it imploded from water intake because I don't even believe he found it. I think he's covering for himself. He had to come up with some kind of story because he just lost an $800,000 piece of equipment. If he didn't come out with answers, he was losing his job.
Dude, it's like
this guy was biased.
Dude, it's the classic.
Biased.
It's the classic. The dragon ate my $800,000 piece of equipment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I hate when that happens.
Yeah,
What a
exactly.
bummer.
You understand.
Couldn't find it ever again. Oh no.
It's the largest ship
Don't sue
that
me,
they ever
please.
made. I mean, come on.
Whose dragon's that?
Dragon attack.
That
I get it.
they did find it though, which is nice.
No, He said they found it. Nobody else has found it. Nobody else has found it.
No, there's actually a memorial
Shit.
down there.
Oh, yeah, they did.
So there's a memorial down
He
there.
did it.
And
He
Oh,
placed
there
the
is a
plaque, though.
memorial.
he did not place the plaque. He did the research and found the ship.
No,
but
yeah,
he didn't actually place
he
the
placed
plaque.
the plaque. He had the plaque with him, and they placed it down there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there is a memorial down by the ship remains, and every year I believe they do some kind of festival where the ship had left off, somewhere in the UK. I don't remember exactly where, but
Yeah.
where the ship had originally left, they do like a memorial every year for the people that had lost their lives.
Oh yeah.
And how many died in that?
There were the whole crew. I believe it was. I want to say it was like 39.
Damn.
It may have been a little more than that, though.
Yeah. Oh, that's the largest. Not the largest one made. The largest one lost at sea. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Damn. And that was 230 miles off Okinawa. Dragon Palace.
Yeah, so that would be like right in the center of, or well,
Super far away from.
the average of where the
You're a
Dragon
dragon.
Sea is.
Yeah, but you got to figure
course.
if you're a dragon, I mean, what's a few kilometers to
Exactly.
you?
Yeah.
You
And
know?
especially open ocean.
Relatively, they're just like,
That's
oh,
probably-
cool, we're just going to Okinawa, no problem.
Take a little stroll.
That'll take 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And
And I'm a fast dragon underwater.
And let's be real. If that's the measurement that they're taking into account, it's because that's the closest island.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of things out there.
Did we have it?
No,
Anything
that's
happened?
that's the last account that I had found.
Yeah, it doesn't stop at like everything.
It
all the
pretty much all
information
ends
for
at the
it
Derbyshire.
stops.
Yeah, it pretty much. Most ships now, when they go missing, the dragons do a pretty good
Is
job
there
covering up.
They know
No.
what happened. To
Was
the
anyone
ships, not
able to
dragons.
find anything that's recently happened?
No.
Yeah, that
that's-
was the thing is nothing recently. A lot of people like to try to throw the Malaysia Flight 370 in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
I don't
Look,
think it was that close.
Look,
was
the
it?
No, it
dragons,
was pretty far.
dragons didn't have anything to do with Malaysia Flight 370. Come on, guys.
That was the aliens.
That was the aliens. Everybody knows that. That was George Bush.
That was that was the war seahorses.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of Japanese fishermen that still go to this area today because I guess
Really?
it's a real popular spot for all these fish to gather. So there are a lot
And
of
humans.
fishermen out there all the
humans.
time, and overall, I'm sure there are people that have stories, but all the real famous accounts of what happened pretty much ended at the Derbyshire for the most part.
And I believe the real reason, what's really going on in the triangle is mostly the Maijin Reef, which is doing those undersea volcanoes. That's taking out ships. And I think the reason why we don't see much after the 80s is probably just because of advances in meteorological or whatever. Like we can know when a
biology
typhoon's
and-
coming,
yeah.
so we get the ships out of there. We stopped leaving fleets sitting out in the open ocean
Yeah.
to get wrecked by ships.
Yeah, exactly.
Or I mean storms. So I really think it's just we got smarter.
Also, too,
Yeah.
Can I add as well that I think that dragons have evolved, and now instead of physically attacking us, they're just attacking our minds.
Yeah, it's probably that.
You know what I
That's
mean?
probably the
Like,
most
that's
likely.
President Hillary Clinton,
She actually
Dragons.
won the election, and
In a different,
in this universe, and
this
they're
universe.
mind controlling all of us to think Trump won.
Ooh,
Yeah, think about it.
dragons.
Because they know we wouldn't let Hillary do what she wants to do. But now all the Trump supporters support everything she does because they think that she's him.
Yeah.
Bro.
They know so much more than us.
I'm telling you.
It's like I want to meet a dragon, but at the same time, I
don't.
don't.
Do we want to add anything else?
No,
We
that
good to
last
close?
bit was just me being stupid.
No, I think that's good. I think
This
that's
place
a good
is
way to end it.
this place was creepy. It's probably not that creepy anymore.
Back in the 80s, this was like the creepiest fucking place in the world.
There's a lot of-
2018, we're in America.
There's a lot of creepy
Welcome.
stories that revolve around the area regardless.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, a lot of people have died in that
Yep,
area.
it's
Yeah,
true.
and
That's
it would
crazy.
be and it would be really cool to plan on doing an episode on the other 11 vile vortices too, including the North and South Pole.
Yeah.
And
I think that would be really cool because there's some creepy shit that happens all around these spots.
yeah. And we actually didn't even go into all
I mean,
the
one
stuff,
of them is inhabited by a big fat white guy who travels around the world.
beating kids.
we actually didn't even get into all the stuff with the triangle, like we left a lot of stuff with World War II out. We actually lost 105 U.S. submarines in the triangle alone.
Damn.
52 of them, we don't know what happened to them.
Yeah.
So
Massive.
now that could entirely be because they got undersea volcanoes and typhoons. So I mean,
yeah, but they still probably would have been found today. I mean, that's a lot, man. That's 52 big ass boats.
There are a lot of accounts that we didn't cover.
My fleet.
Whoops.
There are tons of things we didn't cover. This is just, some of the more popular things, and there are countless more scenarios that happen, including, time jumps and USOs and legends and dragons and all these things.
It's cool, though.
It is very, very worth checking out.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely worth checking out. I would take anything from UFO files with a grain of salt.
Yes.
They like to throw them fast-paced dates at you.
Yeah, and then UFOs, maybe? Ha! Got him.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We really hope that you enjoyed this episode with the Dungeon Junkies crew.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, if you got
any
ideas for creepy things you want us to talk about, shoot us an email.
It's at monstersunderthebedpod I think it's monstersunderthebedpodcast@gmail.com.
All right.
Nice.
We'll have that email in the description. Just send us what you think we should talk about, and we'd love to hear about it.
Absolutely.
100%. We're going to be updating the website soon, so you'll be able to, again, stream and download directly from the website. And
are we planning on doing that on the Dungeon Junkies website, or are we going to do a separate?
There'll be a separate page on the
It's going to be a separate page on the Dungeon Junkies website.
So that'll be on DungeonJunkies.com, and that's where you can stream, obviously, the Dungeon Junkies episode, see all the information on that podcast, as well as the Monsters Under the Bed stuff. And we are I believe we're going to be doing this bi-weekly at first. I think that's the plan right now. But depending on, how many stories we can get in, how much time we have, we would really like to try and do this weekly. So if you can support us, please check out our Patreon at patreon.com/dungeonjunkies. And that is what is going to help us pretty much be able to do this full time. That's what we're really working towards, is doing this full time and giving you guys some great content where we have some more time to research this stuff and really put in the work that we'd really truly like to when it comes to this, because this is something that we've all wanted to do for a while. So
tell your friends and family, and we love you.
See you guys later.
See you next week or 2 weeks from now.
Be afraid of the dragons.
Yeah, they're
fear the dragons.
Spread the word.